Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Things AI podcast. Here with me today is Jon Reifschneider, the founding director of the AI Masters of Engineering program at Duke University and the co-founder and CEO of Inquisite, leading AI platform for research teams. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
My pleasure. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to cover with like the vast experience that you have in AI, so really happy to have you here. I guess one place that we can start off is Inquisite since it's one of your newest endeavors. Can you tell me a bit about what Inquisite is currently working on and how it's working towards accelerating scientific discovery?
Sure. So Inquisite is a startup company that I co-founded, and we launched last fall. We've been working on it probably 6 months or so prior to that. It originally spun out of some research I was doing at Duke University, and it's a company that's still partially owned by Duke. And so our focus is on accelerating science using AI, and specifically, we build agentic AI tools for research teams that help accelerate their workflows. So a great example of that is the first tool we released, which is called our Research Assistant, and that streamlines the process of conducting literature reviews. So researchers, when they start a new project, for example, typically have to do it's called a literature review, where they do a full review of all the academic research that's been done in that area. And then they create sort of a report or a large table of everything that's been done before. And that can be a really time-consuming process. It could take days, weeks, even to go through all of it and compile and synthesize it all. So one of the great things about AI is that it's very quick to review and summarize or synthesize materials. And so we use AI to automate some of that process. So it very quickly performs a search, identifies the relevant literature, reviews the literature, actually reads the papers, and then synthesizes a summary for the researcher. And then you can iterate back and forth with it. So if you want to then dive into sort of a deeper topic or specific niche within that field, it's very easy to dive in and explore the literature. So it's really completely revolutionizing the way that research and literature reviews are done. So that is the first tool we had built, and we're working on a new tool that's going to launch in a couple of weeks on the grants side of things. Finding and applying for grants is another workflow that researchers, particularly in the academic side, have to spend a lot of time on, up to 30 to 40% of their time. And we think that we can streamline that entire process. So if we could reduce the time spent, let's say from 40% down to let's say even 30%, that frees up a significant
Yeah.
chunk of researchers' time to do actual research and move their field forward. So our focus is on looking at where we can apply AI to build tools that can accelerate processes for researchers so they can focus on the research and move it forward faster.
Yeah, no, that sounds, I guess like the big takeaways that I'm taking from this are you can use AI to automate a lot of like really time-taking processes. And I think in science that's like really important. I myself have conducted like a bunch of literature reviews before for even like some of the papers and like that I published on AI. So I think like that has a big application. So one thing I'm wondering is how exactly, maybe if you want to elaborate a bit more on like the literature search tool, because there's numerous things I'm thinking of right now, like you could have a LLM do it and like call the LLM to review a certain paper and give it like a prompt, or you could even train like a completely like an LLM of yourself. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on like I guess more of like the back end of how the tool's working.
Yeah, happy to. With the research assistant tool, we have sort of a multi-step search and synthesis process, and so to kind of walk through it. When you put in a query, we take your query, we break it down into a set of sort of one or more subqueries, depending on what you're asking for. So, for example, if you're asking to compare the properties of two different materials, well, that might end up being two different queries. And then we perform both and we synthesize the results. So we break down your query, we create a number of subqueries, and then we execute all those subqueries, meaning we search for relevant papers for each of those subqueries. And so we then end up with a large collection of research papers, let's say a few hundred papers. Out of that. And then we have to work our way through those few hundred papers. And this is where AI really shines, for example. So we can quickly read, starting with things like the metadata, the title of the authors, how many citations. We can review the abstracts of the papers. We can even, in many cases, review the full text of the papers when it's accessible online. So we can work our way very quickly through all those papers, rank them in terms of relevancy, because not all of those 400 papers are going to be relevant. Maybe only 20 to 30 of them are, but we don't know until we actually dig into them which are the 20, 30 that are relevant. So that's where we use AI. We review all the papers, we identify the most relevant ones, and then we go through those and we both present those as sort of the most relevant subset to the user, and then we can also create a synthesis. So we review, we extract the main details from each of the papers. And we can write sort of a brief report or maybe a table where we show sort of for each of the papers what the main conclusions were, what methodologies were used, what the data sets or sort of experiment design was that was used, what the limitations of the study were, et cetera. And so we can very quickly organize all of that information for a researcher using large language models. So in that case, we don't train large language models ourselves. We use existing large language models, but we use a kind of a collection of them rather than just one. So we have probably, let's say, 5 different large language models that are used sort of throughout that entire process, and each one is specialized to a very specific task it's performing.
Yeah, no, that approach completely makes sense because like even at the conference that we were talking about like right before we started this, like obviously there's like huge amounts of like financial resources that are going into creating those models. And I guess the whole point is if they're like publicly available for use, it's extremely efficient to just use them instead of training your own because it like wipes a lot of that cost out and it's unnecessary. But I think another thing that's I really like what you mentioned is this is an innovative approach in the sense that the process is like fully like automated because almost what I was thinking of like when you mentioned literature review was like someone like a researcher like myself might present like 20 or 30 papers and then like the AI would go through. But I think the fact that you're able to like just search something and then have that search itself turn into like a literature review is like really innovative because honestly, like finding papers is also an extremely time-taking process.
Yeah, it can be, and in particular, finding the most relevant papers.
Yeah,
So it's relatively straightforward to find papers, but you end up with, let's say, 100 or more, and then you don't know which ones are the most relevant ones. And the only way to really figure that out is to go through them all. So
that's
that's
time.
that's the part of the process we're trying to automate, is to identify for you what are the ones you should look at first, so you can kind of prioritize your time and not waste your time reviewing stuff that's not relevant.
Yeah, no, I think that's like it's going to be a huge time saver like going in the future for researchers. So I want to take like I guess a step away from that. And so I think you mentioned it when you were introducing Inquisite that agentic AI has been a major focus of what you guys are doing. And on a broader spectrum, what advances do you think we're going to see in terms of agentic AI in 2025?
Yeah, it's come a long way very quickly already, and a big part of that is due to the foundation models just getting better and better. One of the key requirements for agentic systems is that they're able to execute some level of planning of their actions, and to execute any kind of planning requires a really strong large language model. And so it's only been fairly recently that we've had models which are strong enough to be capable of developing a good plan. So to put this in context, for those who are maybe less familiar with this idea, so agentic AI or AI agents are really all about getting work done. And the first step to getting any work done is building a plan to do that work. So if you were at work or at school and your teacher or your manager gave you a task or project to do, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to sit down and you're going to work out a step-by-step plan of here's all the things I need to do in order to get this done. And so that's what we mean by planning. And so rather than a human doing that, a large language model is going to go and build that plan. And then they're going to have access to a set of what we call tools, which is really kind of a set of actions that they can use to go and execute the steps of that plan. So once they built the plan, they'll go step by step. They'll use the actions available to them to execute on those steps. And those might be things like searching for information, doing a web search, doing a literature search, and in the academic world, calling APIs to get information or even to take actions like book flights or schedule meetings or write emails, for example. And so only recently have the LLMs been strong enough to build a plan, which was kind of the key requirement for it to make the whole thing work well. And as LLMs continue to get better and better, which they certainly will, their ability to do this planning will also get better. Some of the new reasoning models, in particular, excel at this step, and that's going to make it much more compelling to build agents because it will be capable of building these really strong plans. The execution of the plans is relatively easy because it's just sort of using APIs or using existing tools to get work done. The hard part is really the building the plans. And so I think we'll see them get better and better this year and the next couple of years to the point where they're able to execute really fairly sophisticated projects on our behalf.
Yeah. So I guess I want to take like a so you have a lot more experience, like even beyond this, I guess. And one thing that I found really interesting is you serve as the director for the Center for Research and Engineering of AI Technology and Education at Duke. And it's kind of funny because that goes by the acronym CREATE, and it's like when you're in education, you're teaching people how to create like new things. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, so like I think AI in education is a place that we don't just need to be cautious, but it's also has like immense potential because I mean we're seeing that teachers are getting increasingly burnt out like across school districts in the US. So I think in a numerous amount of ways AI can definitely help. So what do you think are some of the promising applications of AI for increasing equitable education?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the potential in education, but at the same time, yeah, I'm also very realistic
Hmm.
about what it's going to do. We've seen kind of waves of technology before in education that have had a lot of promise to sort of revolutionize education and really haven't delivered.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's important to also be kind of cautious about the whole thing. Yeah, the Create Lab at Duke has kind of a joint mission of both creating, building AI-based tools to support teaching and learning at Duke, and then doing research on the impacts of those tools. And we're in a unique position being an academic lab in that um, we take kind of an unbiased view of the actual impacts versus, let's say, a company who builds these tools and then tries to do research on them. Of course, they're going to be biased towards wanting to see positive impacts of their tools. So we have the ability to sort of look from a neutral point of view to see are these tools actually helping the students learn or are they not, or maybe they're even hurting. And so that's what we do. And we built various tools, things like we have what we call Qubit, which is an AI coding assistant that's designed to help students learn how to code rather than just simply doing it for them, which things like ChatGPT and others do. And so we've done quite a bit of research on that. And we've had positive results. I think overall, if you look at the literature, results have been somewhat mixed. There certainly have been studies that have shown a positive impact on student learning. And then there have been other studies which have shown some negative impacts because the students become overly reliant on these tools. And then when the tools are removed and they're asked to actually do the work without them, they're not able to do it. So I think that's kind of the danger. And so there's a bit of a line between using the tools in a way that actually helps the students learn, because there's plenty of opportunity to do that, and then becoming overly reliant on the tools to the point where you're not actually learning anything and you're just having the tool do it, and then it certainly hurts the learning. One of the things that really has been exciting to us that we've learned through our research so far is not only the impact of these types of tools on the students' learning outcomes, but also on their attitude towards the subject matter. So we've done a lot of research on our AI coding tool, and one of the things that excites us is that we found the use of it creates a more favorable view of coding as a potential future career path for students relative to those students who don't use it. And that's exciting to us because learning the code is hard.
Yeah.
It can be really frustrating, and a lot of people give up on it because of that. And so if we're able to do something like give them some tools that remove a bit of that frustration and stress and make them more likely to stick with it, we can end up with a lot more people staying the course and turning it into a future career path, which is great for all of us. So that part's really exciting to us.
Yeah, I mean, you gave so many insights there, and I think the last one is especially important because one of the like the moving trends that we're hearing from like I guess professionals in AI is yeah, there will be jobs that are going to be displaced as a result. But maybe one thing that you can do is make sure that the jobs or people that are getting displaced, or in general, like new graduates coming in, know how to use AI and even make it. Because like if you're a creator of AI, you can do so many more tasks. So like I guess an idea that I'm just throwing out as I think about this in the discussion is like, what if we had like different sectors of like the economy, like healthcare, education, finance, and there were professionals, and this kind of exists already, I guess, but like professionals that are specifically developing AI in those fields. But I think what needs to happen is we need to increase the amount of professionals. Like education is one area where I don't see much of a like I guess like a wide amount of people like actually putting themselves in AI and education. But I think it's one of the most important applications because of the benefits that you mentioned. So I think like it would be interesting to see in the future if we have like different sectors of the economy and like more jobs in AI because not only does that prevent like job loss to a certain extent, but at the same time, like if someone can use AI, they can do 10 times more than what they would be able to do without it.
Yeah, they certainly will. And I think we're seeing more and more people in very different fields starting to use AI. Education too. Education tends to be a slower moving field for a variety of reasons. So it certainly is lagging behind other areas of the economy in terms of AI adoption. But even in education, we're starting to see more and more and more of
For
it.
sure.
And I think that trend will continue.
Yeah. And I think you guys are leading the way in doing it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of it in the next few years. Um, but yeah, so I guess before we wrap up the education portion of this, one thing that I really wanted to talk about was like AI fact check, or not AI fact checkers, like just AI checkers. So as you've mentioned yourself, like a lot of students are using AI for, I guess what you could call bad purpose because nobody should be cheating on these assignments. I think using AI to like help is a reasonable like metric or a reasonable thing to do, but where can you draw the line between cheating and like using it to help yourself? I think that's like kind of like that ambiguity is kind of what you were getting towards also. So I'm wondering like what's your opinion on these AI checkers because they can be inaccurate in some instances and students can be penalized. So like what stage are we at with them?
Yeah, very good question. I don't personally really believe in the AI checkers, and it's not necessarily because of their performance. Generally, they're fairly effective at flagging when something's been written by AI. The problem is that they occasionally flag things that humans have written as being written
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
AI. And for an academic institution or a school, it's really the worst thing you can do to accuse a student of cheating that hasn't actually cheated. You certainly don't want to do that.
It's
And so
awful. Yeah.
yeah, so because there's a non-zero chance that that can happen, it essentially invalidates the entire thing, in my opinion. So I think at least at the higher education level where I work, I don't know that I could speak to sort of the K to 12 level, but at the college level, I would say the majority of schools are they may be using them as a check or a flag, but they're not using them in making kind of final decisions around whether students have cheated or not. I also think there's a line that's pretty gray in terms of what actually constitutes cheating when you talk about AI use versus not. Obviously it's one thing if the faculty member doesn't allow any use of AI at all, then it
Yeah.
becomes pretty obvious. But if they allow use of AI for things like asking questions, kind of researching, et cetera, but then they don't allow AI for maybe writing the final answer. It can become a little hazy in terms of where exactly is that line between those things.
Yeah.
And I think most schools probably need to do a better job of being clear about that because I think it is a bit confusing right now for students to try to figure that
Yeah.
out.
And I think if you want to be clear, what you need to do is establish an AI policy. And that's something that like almost no school in the US has. I think especially at like the higher education level in college, policies towards AI are getting a bit more lenient. At the high school level, you're kind of right. I mean, there isn't much out there to be honest, and it's kind of sad, but that's the situation that it's in. But at the college level, like I've taken a few college classes, for example, one of them was actually a coding class. And the professor says you can use AI to like help you with some things. Obviously, never use it to write because if you're using the AI to do everything, then you're not learning anything. And when you need to apply this on a test or even yet in like a real world situation, you're not going to be able to do it in that case because you need to apply what you're learning. It's not like the basic problem you're getting in class. So I think like at the higher education level, it's a bit more like clear, and I definitely agree with you on that. But with that being said, I think one thing that we should definitely cover is you're someone that has like vast experience in like numerous realms of AI, but you're also now like going into the entrepreneurial role. So, I think you're like a perfect person to speak on this. What is some advice that you'd like to offer for entrepreneurs or and even like AI researchers in perhaps like Gen Z and Gen Alpha?
Yeah, I think good question. I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities to make positive improvements in the world using AI and really across sort of all fields. So certainly in kind of the core technology area, there's lots of lots of exciting things to work on. But in very different fields, places like healthcare, education, energy, climate, agriculture, et cetera. All of those areas, there are opportunities for using AI that haven't been explored yet. So, number one, there's tons of opportunity in lots of areas. I think number two, if you're going to start a company or you're going to get involved in some research, it's you really want to make sure it's something that you're passionate about, something that excites you, because it is going to be a long journey. Particularly kind of on the company side, you're going to probably spend several years of your life working on it, and so you want it to be something that's meaningful and impactful for you, and not just something you're going to get kind of tired of in a couple months and want to move on and go do something totally different. So finding a problem that is worth solving in your opinion and is exciting to you, and worth spending your time on because you'll spend a ton of time on it, is probably the most important thing. And it's also a common mistake I see with people that start companies because they just one day have some sort of idea of something cool, that they could make, or kind of a simple sort of app that they think would be kind of neat. But but it's something that captures their attention for maybe a week or a month or two, but then they kind of want to move on with their life and go do something different. So those things are usually not a good foundation to build a company, because of the time commitment it requires. So finding something that you think is going to be exciting to you for the next, let's say, 3 to 5 plus years, I think is really important.
Yeah. Well, I think that really sums it up. And that's some of the advice that I'll be taking myself. I mean, I'm still deciding what I want to do, I guess, going through college and after that. So, yeah, I think like I completely agree. What I've tried to do is like stay open to everything that comes my way and then kind of like pick and choose, I guess, because there's so many opportunities out there and like there's so many ways to apply this, like technology of AI. And I think that's like maybe even the most amazing part about it if you're someone that's interested.
Yeah, and when you're younger and you're earlier in your education or your career, it's really important to kind of explore a lot of different areas, get to know, find opportunities to get to know a lot of different fields. I think we have a common, we have sort of a challenge in our society today that people tend to specialize way too early, and so they kind of go down one very specific niche
Mhm.
really early in their education or their career, and then it can be really hard to kind of get out of that. And so I think there's a lot of value in staying broad, exploring lots of different areas, and then over time, you kind of narrow in on something that you find. So that would be my advice if you're earlier in your career and you're still in your education. Take the opportunity to explore lots of different areas, learn a lot of different things, figure out what excites you, and then gradually, over time, you'll kind of narrow in on something specific.
Yeah, for sure. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure, it's my pleasure.